Welcome to episode 2. I have my mom joining us for a little bit of Q&A. In episode 1, you were able to hear about my parenting journey, but I wanted to bring on my mom to kind of give some background to what that parenting journey looks like and the start of my parenting journey. All right, mom, you can introduce yourself and tell us about yourself.
So my name is Karen. I am the mother of four adult children. I lost one recently. I have 17 grandchildren. In my professional life, I am a mental health and substance use counselor and therapist by trade. I did that work for a little over 30 years and segued my career into full-time academic teaching. So I'm an assistant professor and also an adjunct professor at two local colleges and universities.
All right. Thank you for sharing. All right. So, gonna jump into the questions. First topic, childhood and upbringing. What are some of your favorite childhood memories?
We had a lot of family gatherings around food and cooking and entertaining. Those are some of my favorite memories. Even on my dad's side, my favorite memories on his side also were family gatherings and family dinners, holidays with the family where we were sharing food and love and laughs. And that was something that was ingrained in me and I enjoyed. It was a part of my childhood and upbringing that I really liked. It was fun. It was embarrassing sometimes because my grandmother used to put me on the spot because I was bright for my age at around 5-ish. I used to have to perform and let people see how I could read books and pronounce big words. But I still loved it. And I still to this day reflect on every time I think about those events in my childhood, it brings a big smile to my face. I don't celebrate many holidays, but Thanksgiving and New Year's are at the top of my list, and that's because of my family upbringing.
Some of my favorite childhood memories were when the whole family got together. I didn't really get a lot of experience with the cousins except for if it were on holidays or family reunions. I like when the family all got together because then it was somebody my age and just get to hang around some of the other kids.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've shared this before with you, but my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Grandma Hazel, and my mom, Roberta, they were very popular. So growing up, we had, even especially on Thanksgiving, my mom, there were only three of us and my mom in the house, but the way she would cook on Thanksgiving, it was like she was cooking for a whole army because people had Thanksgiving dinner at their house and then come to our house for the rest of the evening and get a plate and hang out and listen to some music and eat some good foods. Yeah, so that's where the entertaining and social person. That's why I always like having people over for dinner because that is just so ingrained in me from both of those ladies in my life.
And how did your parents or caregivers influence your upbringing?
Well, so I was raised primarily by my mom and my grandmother. I lived with my grandmother when I was really young. And even when we weren't living with my grandmother, she was still part of the upbringing. And because I spent a lot of time at her house. My mom was she was strict, but she wasn't there to supervise all the time to make sure that the things she was being strict about. So I always thought that was a little kind of an oxymoron. But my mom was pretty strict. She really was education was important. She didn't play about school. It was the expectation when I was very young that I would go to school and do my schoolwork, do my homework, and not, because I know that my mom knew that, that was going to set me up for a good future. And so both of my grandparents, her parents also instilled that in me as well. And then on my dad's side, my aunts, I had two aunts who really supported me from a young child and also supported me thriving in education. And it worked, because I always took school seriously, even when I was getting into trouble. Like it was probably more of a shameful thing on my part. 'Cause I knew what was expected of me and I expected it of myself too. And so that was a big thing with me growing up. And then I think carried it down to my raising my own children, and because I know, particularly for Black children, how important you don't at least have that, high school diploma, you make it hard for yourself. And
Mhm.
I was serious and adamant about that and raising my own kids. And also, again, that tradition of getting together, family is important, is a vital part of who you are. Even though we have this whole individualistic society that we're living in, and I think a lot of it's a piece of us that we lost, right? When we were in Africa, that's what it was all about, the collective, and not so much focus on the individual. Um, and focus on the individual is good, don't get me wrong, but I do think collective is important because that's your support, that's your village, and establishing that and maintaining that starts with the family.
Yeah. And I think like how you influenced my upbringing was, I know I've told you this story plenty of times, but just you staying grounded in your religion, your Christianity, and just being that anchor to the family of no matter what was going on, you never shifted away from God. And I think looking back at that now, that helps me know that no matter what is going on, like no matter what's happening in your life, that is, you need to stay planted in God. Like you need to stay in God's grace because you see the difference of your life and how your life goes when you start moving away from God. And I just feel like, just as a mom now myself, I look back at that. I look back at that and I'm in awe of that. And I don't think, like, growing up, I didn't really think too much of it. I'm just like, oh man, she dragging us out the house on Sunday. And I just like, we were going to fellowships, we were going to Bible studies, and I'm just like, I would rather be home hanging out in the house. And it's like, I didn't think of that. And some of those lessons I still know now. Like, even I remember one Bible study, one Wednesday we were at Bible study and I was in the back in the last pew sleeping, and Brother Jones, he had came back there and he's like, what you doing back here sleeping? And I was like, I'm tired. Like, I'm tired. It's nighttime. Like, it's I'm supposed to be in the bed asleep. So then he told me about the guy that fell asleep in church and never woke
Yes,
up. So,
yes,
and I to this day, I mean, I must have been
yeah.
like, yeah, I must have been like probably 10, 11 years old. And I still remember that to this day. And I just feel bad about falling asleep. Like, and I was 10, like I was 10,
Right.
11 years old. And I still remember that. But I was just like, in that moment, I just was so tired. And I was just like, man, I don't care what this old man is saying. Like, he better go ahead somewhere. But yeah, like, I just carried that with me throughout my life. Even though, like, some of the decisions that I made in my life, it just seemed like I had forgot God. But just knowing that God never forgot me, because I had a praying mother. I had a mother who was anchored in God, and I carry that now with my kids, is no matter
Mhm.
what they're going through, is that I need to stay anchored because they can't do it. They can't do it in the states that they're at now, in the different stages that they're at now. They can't do that. So they need someone to do that. Not to say that you're not going to do it because those are your grandchildren, but just to have that power of prayer, that power of God
Yes,
with you in your house. And it's like, that's even in my daily prayer, is God, just protect the household, protect the
yes.
doors, protect the windows, and to keep the evilness away, and don't even let it be within a 5-mile radius. And I don't know why I stuck with 5-mile radius. Is I'm just like, don't even let it be within walking distance. Like, keep
Mhm.
that evilness away. I know that I got that from the way that you've raised us. And I mean, there may be some other stuff that later on in life I may have like that aha moment. Oh, my mom did this, my mom did that. But that is one thing that I can honestly say has really shaped my life, and it saved my life.
Mhm.
Having a mom, who was so strong inside of their religion and inside of their faith, and just having that, because I can't say that even in any of my friends that I grew up with, that their mom was as consistent with going to church and just being, even the Bible teachers, even the sisters meetings and things, and to now I'm doing those things for my peers that you were
Right.
doing back then. So I feel like those traditions have kind of crept over to me, to now I'm carrying that torch. And I just think that that's just so amazing. And
Yeah.
because back then, if you would have told me when I was being dragged to those Wednesday Bible studies that I would soon be doing, some Bible studies of my own, you couldn't convince me. You could not convince me.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I wasn't ready to unleash it, so I was refraining, but the Spirit told you to say it. I was going to save that for later in the podcast, but since you brought it up, yeah, I was raised in the church and with a church upbringing, and at a very young age as well. Intentionally myself, I would leave everybody in the house. At a point, my mom always, I was raised in one religion, and then I converted. My grandmother converted to the religion I'm in now, and then I converted, and my sisters also around the same time. And that's, where I've been consistent. But my mom was still a believer. She just stopped going, I guess, because her mom dragged her to the services. But having that exposure kept me grounded. And, I guess it was almost like something I didn't think about. And so it wasn't so much that because I was a quote unquote church girl, that kept me from, all of the evils of, the lures of teenagehood. I was still, and I'll tell you, I was out hanging out in the clubs at a very young age with my teenage friends. And we'd be able to get in these places. And, sometimes I would spend the weekend with them, and I would leave them in the club and go home to their house and go to sleep so I could get up and go to church in the morning. And, one of the girls' cousins said that made me a hypocrite. I was like, no, I know. I cannot have both feet out here in this foolishness. I'm going to keep one foot in. Get in there. And thank God he spared me that the other foot did get in there all the way. But it was a journey too. But, there was even a time, because I'll say also, I experienced a lot of harsh tribulations, when I was a young mother, as a teenager, we'll start there, and as a young mother, and even, to the point where, I had black eyes, but that didn't stop me from going to services. I would put my sunglasses on and show up, and because I was ashamed, because I didn't do that to myself. They could figure out, who's came from, and so, that's one thing that I've been adamant about, being intentional about naming y'all. You were my first daughter, or my only, what I'm talking about, first daughter, you're my only daughter. And I was just being intentional. Your name means belonging to the Lord, and your middle name means God's gift. So it was like, and I had to throw in my grandmother's name in there because of the relationship that we had and the bond that we had from the time I was born until the day that she died. I had to name my only daughter, my first and only daughter. I had to put her name in there. I was intentional about that when I named you and your brothers, to make sure that your names had meaning, that was meaning and purpose to serve God or to belong to God or be a part of God. And I was very intentional about naming you guys for that reason, particularly because of my circumstances. I wanted to wrap y'all with God as much as I could, and your name was the best way to do that, because every time I say your name or anybody else says your name, they're actually calling on the name of God as well. So yeah, I wasn't even going to get to that part yet, but yeah, it was very important to me early on to make sure. And even when I had your oldest brother, I was homeless. When I was pregnant with him, I was a freshman in college, and I made a vow to God that if he get me through this situation, that I would dedicate him, that wasn't even thinking about the rest of y'all at that time. I would dedicate him to God, and I think I honored that. I hope I honored that. I hope God believes that I honored that. So yeah, and to this day, as you know, we just lost your brother, and that probably was the worst day of my life to have that. But at the same time, when I'm hearing in my ear that my son is gone, I was praising God at the same time. I was saying, thank you, Jesus. I was saying, thank you, Jesus, and crying and falling, like couldn't even stand up straight, pacing the floors. But I was saying, thank you, Jesus, at the same time, because I knew God had me. I felt him. I felt his presence. And I want to, we don't emphasize anything else from that conversation, this part of the conversation is that me having God in my life and my parenting life and my walk as a Christian, a Black Christian woman, is my foundation, but it's also my air that I breathe. I don't know any other way to do it. And so I'm glad that rubbed off on you, so to speak, too. But yeah, that was really important to me and my upbringing, and also it saved me. Just like you said, it saved me too, Dominique. It saved me too. It saved me too. That foundation saved me too, because I saw where I was going. And we wouldn't be saying I like where this is going if it wasn't for God. We wouldn't be liking where it was going if it wasn't for God.
How about that?
So yeah.
Well, that kind of segues us into the next question. What values or traditions did you learn from your family? I feel like we kind of already answered that.
Yeah, like I said, top 3. I think it was in one of those movies, God, family, and family and education or something. I don't know in that order, but yeah, those values I carried on. And like I said, I didn't sort of in a strange relationship with my father early on as well, but his sisters, grabbed a hold of us, me and my sister, and kept us to be a part of the family. And they were a family of believers as well. And so a lot, so those two, my 2 aunts, they embody that value as well, that no matter what, these are children, and they're not going to be discarded. And they did that based on their faith. And I know because they had a really rough childhood themselves. So, I'm really grateful to God for them as well. But yeah, family is very important. Traditions, and not traditions because people say they're traditions, like the traditions that everybody else in the world is doing, next door neighbor, what they're doing on the job, but the traditions that have meaning, right? Because sometimes I think, we as Black folk, we embrace traditions that don't belong to us, and just for the sake of having the tradition or participating in the tradition. And when I was growing up, for instance, we celebrated Christmas, and I made a decision based on my religion, but also based on the fact that I didn't have all of the information, right? So I said, once I got some more information about it, I decided I wasn't going to follow that tradition blindly anymore, because I wanted to educate myself so that me and my family participate in something a little bit different. And so that's how I am. Sometimes, it's almost like if you don't go along with the crowd, you get outcast for that too. And I have gotten flack, for some decisions that I made as a parent of what we're going to do, what we're going to participate in terms of traditions, and what we're not going to participate in terms of the traditions. I don't know if I should say this, but I will. One of the things that I didn't believe in is you guys saying the prayers and preaching, right? And so I would get phone calls from teachers, and I say, yeah, my child is doing what I told them to do. And yeah, you can't, we don't believe in that. And so, that kind of like when they were ready to discipline you after school or something, absolutely not. That's against my values and my traditions and my religion. So no, they're not going to be doing that, and you're not going to discipline them for that. And so, yeah, I think that we should really, and I'm not knocking anybody who wants to honor those traditions, but, I believe in making informed decisions, right? Find out what it is thoroughly, find out what it is and what it's about, what its origins are, and then decide if you want to participate in that. And if you do, okay, more power to you. But has always been my stance as a parent. And I think that was different too from my upbringing. That's something that I decided to do as a mother that my parents did not, and my grandparents.
Just to point out the Pledge of Allegiance thing, I think a lot of people don't really think about it. They just do it because they do it as I'm an American. They don't really look at the history of that. And when you think about the things that are happening today, this country was founded on the backs of Black people. And I also tell my kids not to do the Pledge of Allegiance, to where I had to have a conversation with them. And I said that it's not about the veterans. It's not about the veterans. I have the utmost
Right.
respect for people
Yes.
who will
We
put
have
their
family.
life on the
My
line.
grandfather was a
Exactly.
veteran. Yes, we have
Exactly.
family who are veterans.
Anybody who's willing to put their life on the line for a higher cause, I
We
have
honor
the
them.
utmost respect
Yes,
of that.
and we honor them.
That's not
Absolutely.
what it's about. I am not disgracing them for that. It is the fact that that flag represents something that is not of us. It is not of us. There is a country, and even in today's society, even in the medical system, there is embedded racism in a lot of that. And a lot of that says that we are less than. So I will not be pledging my allegiance to anything that's going to say that I'm less than. My allegiance is with God. I will pledge that all day, every day.
Right.
I'm not pledging my allegiance to a material
A
flag.
symbol. Yes, a symbol.
A symbol. And I feel as though, yes, I am an American, but I am a Christian first.
Right.
And when people get the two confused, it's like, that's not me disgracing a veteran. That's not me disgracing my country. My country is not on this earth. My country is not on this earth. This is my
Right.
temporary home.
Right.
I am willing to have that conversation with any educator, with anybody who is willing to say, oh, well, you have to show some respect. No, my respect is me doing nothing, because it can go a little bit further. The people who do all those extreme things. But I'm showing respect by just not doing it, because every time I hear somebody doing the Pledge of Allegiance or singing the Star Spangled Banner, I can go on a whole rant of why I'm not going to do that. So I'm respecting others' opinions. There's a difference in opinions, but it comes a time where you have to separate difference of opinion from difference of whether I am human, whether I have rights, whether I am equal to you, because then that's when it stops being differences of opinion. That's when it just now is racism. You are being racist by saying I should do this because this is the country that I live in. But look at the history. Look at the history of it, and I don't even have to go far. I can go a few years of just what this country has done for my people. I can go 6 months out what this country has done for my people, and it has not been anything positive, has not been anything to where I would say, oh man, I love being American, like, you know, good old USA. Like, no, that is not how I feel. This is just where I was born, you know. Like, my allegiance will never be with a piece of cloth. It just won't.
Absolutely.
It just won't.
And that's what I said. It's a symbol. It's a symbol, and it's a symbol that doesn't represent all of who I am and all of who, you know, who my family is. And so again, you know, that doesn't make me less of a patriot, or it's not teaching my children not to be patriots, because that has, you know, even the word patriot has changed its flavor, so to speak, and I think today doesn't mean the same thing that it used to be. But yeah, I love the freedoms that I have compared to maybe other countries in this country, but I'm also treated like an equal citizen of this country too. And so, you know, we can go on a whole
Yeah, that can be a whole episode in itself.
you know, about, you know, what does it really represent. But the bottom line is as a parent, I made a decision that no, my children are not going to do that in school. And I took a stand, and it, you know, it really, back then, nothing happened except for you guys didn't get kept after school or suspended for not pledging allegiance. So yeah, that was actually an example of how, you know, like I said, some traditions I value and hold because they match the values that I have as a grown adult woman, you know, with her own family. And I made a decision that some traditions um are I'm gonna carry on, and others I'm gonna let go because they don't serve who I am as a person, and they don't serve who me and my family are as people.
So moving on to parenting and family. So what was your experience like raising me and my siblings?
So I was a single mom. I wasn't always a single mom. I was married. I was married. My husband, was abusive. He was physically abusive, and I remained in that marriage for probably way up until right before you were born. When I met your father subsequently, and actually was in another abusive relationship too. Sometimes we call ourselves victims, but we have to look at our role. And I think that sounds a little harsh or whatever, but my role was that I made poor choices, right? In terms of someone who was going to harm me, and being and remaining with them, and in love with them. And it has a lot to do with me at the time, not yet valuing myself above what I was subjecting myself to. Once I learned to value myself and respect myself above how I was being treated, and I started letting those type of relationships go and not involving myself with anybody, man, woman, child, dog, cat, who was not going to respect me for the person that I am. But at any rate, I forgot the question, but went on that tangent. You were asking me, can you repeat the question?
What was your experience like raising me and my siblings?
Okay, yeah. And so, yeah, you see how easy I go away with that, because that unfortunately was the foundation of my relationships with your fathers. But, I will say I still love being a mom. I love seeing the different personalities that you guys had. And you know what? When this is the most important factor that I want to highlight is that when I was growing up, I was very shy and timid. I was smart, but I was shy. Right? I was very shy and timid, and I was a very shy and timid teenager too, even though, I might have been rambunctious with my friends or whatever. But for the most part, I didn't speak up for myself and things like that. When I became a mother, like that brought the lion out of me, right? And so all whatever courage I didn't have before then, becoming a mother made me like, because that's how I ended up leaving your brother's dad, my husband. I was like, "No." I was like, I don't want this for them. I don't want this for them." And that gave me the courage to do what I need to do to get myself out of that situation, because, it got to the point where they were little boys feeling like they had to defend their mom. I was like, "Oh, absolutely not. That's not their role. That's not their job. And I'm going to get them. We're all getting out of this situation right away." And, I did made the same decision with your dad. And again, going to therapy. People take therapy, lightly. And therapy for Black folk and Black women is no joke. And it's something that we all, I think, need to seek, because we all have it. We all have. I don't know any of your listeners, but I can tell you one thing is that they all, if they identify with any of my identities, they probably should be seeking some support, whether it's through a coach or a religious leader, or a therapist or a counselor, because just being who we are, we've been subject to a lot of things that are damaging to our psyche, and very traumatic. And so anyway, I got therapy. And I stayed in therapy and continue to seek therapy whenever I need it. I'm in therapy now, for grief counseling and work related stress. And I'm a therapist. So, how hypocritical is that? If I don't go, because if I'm not managing my stressors, or if something traumatic that happens to me is resurfacing itself. And so that's what I did. I became more protective over my children. And sometimes even to this day, I don't think I did the best job. When we get to the part talking about regrets, I wish I had took it to the next level in terms of protection. But yeah, I got therapy. I got better myself so that I could be a better, because I'm like, okay, now is y'all got me, and maybe your dad's from time to time, but it's me, it's on me, and I got to be my best self for y'all, and it's always been about y'all. Even when I did things that maybe, looking, in retrospect weren't the best courses of action, it was still always about y'all. It was always about y'all. And so that's what I want to come with, that becoming a mom made me a lion. It made me a mama bear. And I'm like, nope, not my kids. This is not, we're not living like this. And that not even aside from the relationships, and improving myself so that over time, I saw myself in better relationships and having even a better selection of friends as well, because all of that impacts your children. Even if your children aren't exposed to your friends, if you're hanging around with them and they're not well, then you not being well is going to impact your kids. So either way, is something that we need to do. The other part of it was too, like, okay, I'm a single mom, so I don't have a whole bunch of money. I decided that I need to go back to school to get the education so I could be a better earner for my children, so we can get out of poverty, because we were in poverty. And I did that, and I had to fight for that. I had to fight the system for that too, because they wanted to say, well, you got a job. I was like, yeah, I got a job, but I need some help. I need some help. I still need help. I still need childcare money. I still need food stamps, things like that. And I had to fight for those things, because when you get to be a part of the working class, it's really a struggle to get help. It's either you're poor or you're rich, but the ones in the middle, you could forget it. And also, use that fight and that determination to better y'all's lives in terms of where we were living and the type of housing that we lived in, right? So so we went, each time we moved, it was a better place than the last. One last thing I want to say about that too, like when I was growing up, we moved around a lot. In 12 years of school, I went to, I think, 8 or 9 different schools. So I didn't stay, we didn't stay long. And I'm not judging my mom. I know she had her own struggles financially as a single parent herself, but I determined I didn't want that for my kids. I wanted us to have, so I was real serious about paying my bills on time, making sure the rent was paid, and so that we had a roof over our head. And that was something that I think that maybe a negative effect from my childhood, that I was turned it into something more positive experience, I guess, for lack of a better word, for my children, and making sure that we had housing. And we were homeless one time. I was homeless before I had y'all, but we were homeless one time, but we weren't homeless long. I think it was a couple of months before I did what I had to do. We had an apartment. And I think that was when you were maybe, I don't even think you were 2 yet. You were still a baby. So yeah, other than that, I made sure I was adamant about that we had a roof over our head and electric and running water and heat. Whatever else, we'll get to, and food in the refrigerator, and whatever else we'll get to it. But that was a priority for me as a mom.
Okay. All right. So moving down to life lessons and wisdom. So what advice would you give to your younger self?
My younger self, like I said, she was so timid, and even my younger self as an adolescent had already experienced some really traumatic things that happened to her personally, and also in her family upbringing. I would tell her that she's smart, because I think even though I know that I was smart now, I don't know, I guess I never really realized how smart I was when I was younger. So say, smart, you're a survivor, and no matter what, keep going. No matter what, keep going. Even though I did do that as a child, like no matter what, like I would tell them, I would be the adult me coaching the child me to keep going. And so it'd be like a double voice in her head, to keep going, that you're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. It might be bad now, but it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay, because I'm living that okay. I'm living in that okay through the grace of God today. And some people do know my journey, and some of my friends, they told me how in awe they are. And I reject it all the time, because I said, no, it's not me. God was over all of that. He protected me. Even when I was harmed, he protected me, right? It could have been worse. Every bad situation I can remember ever being in, I saw where it could have been worse because God protected me. And so I know that. And to this day, that gives me comfort and that gives me hope that I don't care what happens, it's not going to be as bad as I think it is because I have God.
And for relationships and reflections, so how has our relationship evolved over the years?
My goodness. Oh my goodness. I think it went from a thunderstorm to a raindrop to a hurricane to a quiet, gentle breeze as it is now. One thing I will say is, and I tell you this all the time, like you were different. And so I had the three boys, right? And so I remember the first time you told me no. And I looked at you because I knew it was you. Your brothers didn't tell me no when they were little. And I looked at him like, did this little girl just tell me no? Side of me, I was so joyous. I was like, this little girl is not like me. Like she's not like I was. She's not that shy, timid person that I was. And so she's gonna be okay. She's gonna be, and sometimes when I've seen you where you act like you're not strong or you don't think you have strength, and I was like, nah, you really do, because you were born with it. I think sometimes you don't summon it. You don't believe it in yourself, so you don't summon it, but it's there, it's there because I saw how sassy and spunky you were and you were bossy. You were bossy. So that sometimes, I wouldn't even say it created a problem. I'm like, because you're a child, and like, kids are going to test boundaries. Period. You might have tested a different set of boundaries, but I still see it as testing boundaries. And so I'm like, I can't become insecure about that, and I didn't. I just had to adjust the discipline, or adjust my boundaries so that like, no, yeah, you can tell me, Mom, I don't like that, but you're not going to tell me you're not going to do so. You know what I mean? So it's like allows you to space. I was growing up, my mother, it wasn't no talking back. It wasn't even no talking about it. So I want to make that difference. Like, okay, we can talk about it because I want to hear your side, because to make sure that what I'm saying that you must do is feasible for you, or there's not some unknown conditions that I'm not aware of. And I think that's what I didn't like about, my mom's style was that if she didn't hear the whole story play out, right? She doesn't know the unseen conditions that maybe might make her bend a little bit where she's going. So I try to be the mother that at least hear you out. And my strategy also was, most of the time when I got a phone call from the teachers, from you and your brothers, when you come home, I ask you what happened in school today. I already know the answer, so I'm expecting for you to tell your side of this. This is your opportunity to tell your side of the story, because the teacher already told me theirs. So I saw you, and you went through a phase in middle school, and I think and when I think back now in retrospect, it wasn't really different from how it was with my mom, because me and my mom did not get along at all when I was a teenager. And I think our period of bumping heads just started a little bit earlier than maybe me and my mom's, but it was the same thing. And so that was another challenge for me. And I remember the last time I hit you, I was like, because it was that, like, you crossed that line of expressing yourself to being disrespectful. And then I had to, like, show you, like, no, I'm still mom. Okay. I'm listening to you. I'm still mom. And so we had that little rough teenager period, right? And then you had the first child, and that put a new dynamic in our relationship, because you were a teen mom, right? You were younger than I was. I was a teen mom too, but I was 19 when I had my first child. That put a new dynamic in our relationship that was kind of awkward, but I think we were close then too. That, because your brothers were out of the house. It was just me and you, right? And we was doing trips together and doing a lot of stuff together, a lot of girl stuff together. That we did it when your brothers were around. Yeah, I always took you like places with me, I guess, as opposed to all of us. But yeah, that was even kind of a special period because it was a new type of relationship for us, that we were all both of us was growing into. You being a parent, and it was a little awkward too, because I'm like, how does this work? My child is responsible for this child, but I'm still responsible for her. I'm child. Like, it was a little confusing sometimes. The system actually can make it even more complicated too. Where like I'm like, okay, she had a baby, but she's still my child. She's still a minor. She's still my child, and I'm still responsible for her and still feel responsible for her. And now this baby too, right? But yeah, so we went through that phase, and then I won't even go over the rough patches of your early motherhood, right, with the two older ones. But then, once all of that got ironed out and you started getting things straightened out for yourself, then I was able to start seeing really your skill, your strengths as a mom. And I was wild again, right? Looking at this little girl do her thing in a totally different way, right? So it kind of took me back to when you were a toddler, when I was like, wow, look at this little girl. And I call you little girl all the time. I'm not never going to stop calling you little girl. Not a little girl, but little girl, meaning it really is short for my little. You're always going to be my little girl. Uh, it took me right back to that. Oh, like, wow, look at this little girl. Look at my little girl, right? Parenting. And you were doing, it was like you were doing a parenting 2.0 version of me. And seeing you like adapt, like even, the way that you adjusted your parenting style for each of your children, right? In a different way than I did it, right? So mine might have been more like the basics, monitoring who needs more reminders, who needs, because everybody got hugs and kisses, right? So it was, but you took it to the next level with your kids, and what y'all millennials call the love languages, even though my that came from somebody in my generation, Gary Chapman. But we gonna give him his props, right? And we gonna give the boomers props for the love language because we created that. But taking it to that level of really like seeing like what each one of your kids need. And again, like I said, I was just in awe once again at what you've been able to do with your children. And you're an amazing mom too. So that makes me, that puffs my chest.
Thank you.
Because like even if I might not be responsible for all of your amazingness as a mom, you're still my daughter, so I still get to take a little credit for that, right? I'm your mom, So yeah, it's just amazing even to see you get through the challenges too, and also now, because we ironed all of the kinks out of our relationship, we are almost we have a friendship too, like I don't know, what do you call it? A mothership, mothership, mother daughtership. I don't know what you call it, but it's wonderful, and I love it because now you're at the maturity level where I can confide in you about things without worrying you about my grown up stuff, right? Because you're grown up too, for real now, and so we can talk about stuff, and I can share things now and let you into parts of my life that I didn't do when you was or maybe a teenager or a younger mom, you're still younger mom. Yeah, so I'm loving where we are. I love where we're going.
On to the personal growth and legacy. I think I want to take the lead on this question too. How have you grown or changed as a person over the years? I want to go back to something that you said. You said that even as a little kid that I was strong. Like you see my strength and I didn't see it. It's not that I didn't know my strength. It was that I've been strong for so long that strength became my weakness. It became my weakness because it got to the point where people expected me to be strong. It was like, like I'm having a bad day and I'm sad, and it's just like, oh well, you this is not you. And I'm like, well, it kind of is.
Can I relate to that just for a brief second too? Because yeah, and I said that, but yeah, I get that too. Because first of all, you're the baby. I'm the oldest, right? And even when I lost my mom when you were We were 4 going on 5. I was 33. And when my mom was dying, grandma, she was telling me, like I was crying coming from the hospital, right? Knowing, my mom's dying from cancer. And I was crying. And my grandma, like, basically told me, one told me that I have to be strong. I wasn't allowed to cry. I was like, what are you talking about? My mom is dying. And I actually went to one of my friends' moms who supported me in my crying for my mom. So yeah, I understand that too. Like when you're expected to be strong because you have been, and people see that in you too, it does become a weakness too. Because you don't get a pass, you don't get an opportunity to fall apart when people have that high expectation of you. So I wanted to just interject that. I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it came to the point where I began to be uncomfortable around people that knew me as strong. It's just like, oh, well, you're the strong one. You always seem like you have it figured out. You always seem like you got it together. Oh man, you've been through so much. You've came through so much. And I'm just like, yeah, but I began to let the things that during the timeline of my life happen, I begin to start to carry that. So it began to be my baggage where, and if you think about the song Bag Lady, yeah, that song played in my head on a daily basis. And even, to the point where I was also, homeless with my 2 kids, and just getting on the bus where I had literal baggage, and it was just like to the point where it's like, you're getting on the bus. If anybody know the bus system in Philly, you're getting on the bus is already crowded. You got the stroller, you got the bags, you got the other kid that's not in the stroller, and the bus driver tell you gotta close up the stroller. Now you gotta unload the bags off of the stroller, put it in the little section that they have right there in the front.
Yeah, that's stressful.
You have to take your baggage. If those bags are your only possessions, you sitting on the bus and there's no seats in the front of the bus. So you gotta sit in the back of the bus and you gotta watch your baggage at the front of the bus. And I think about that very often because all of my baggage, all of my literal baggage I felt like I had to protect it. I felt like I had to protect it because in life, there were no seats up in the front. So I had to sit further back in the back of the bus.
Wow.
And I had to watch my baggage. I had to protect my baggage. So it's like when people say that, oh, you're so strong. Like when they hear my story, when they hear the things that I have walked through, when they hear that, it's like, they feel so many feelings, but one of the things is they just want to give me a hug. They just want to give me a hug because they're just like, you've been through so much, you've grown through so much. And even if they haven't seen me through each one of those phases, they always say like, oh, you're so strong. But it's like shrivel when I hear that word. Well, not now, but there was a point in my life a few years ago, before I had really start digging into therapy and really start digging up all those graves of my past, is the word strong was a fight or flight for me. When somebody said you're strong, it was just like, I only was strong because I felt like I had to be. Was not very early on in life. I had my son very early. So I felt like it is no longer about me. I cannot afford to not be strong. I could not afford to not be strong. And there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of anger, and I did not know where to place that anger. I didn't know where to place that anger. So me being a kid and then having a kid, some of that anger got placed onto that kid. And it didn't take for me to be homeless, and I was in a women's shelter for women and kids. And this lady, she told me that I basically need to check myself. I need to check myself. And because of who she was and what she represented, I was not ready to hear that. I was not ready to hear that my 2 kids, I was parenting them differently. And I could not see that because that child had been with me from the very beginning of me starting to discover myself. So I did not know that I was mirroring what I felt for myself to that child. So it took somebody who was an authority figure, who was basically my bully at that time. So it's like when she's telling me this, I'm not perceiving it to be law. I'm not perceiving it to be something that is actually meant to help me, as more so as something to hurt me. So I did not perceive it then. When she told me that, I did not perceive it then. And that was 2013 in 2025. So that was almost 12 years ago. It did not take until maybe 7 years ago for me to finally go back to that moment back in November 2013 to then hear that same message in her voice, because she was the one who had the gumption to be able to say it to me. No one else had said it to me in that medium. No one else had said it to me, and I'm pretty sure other people noticed it, but it was just like, some people just kind of say it, but then they kind of don't, like, hey, like something's going on, something's going on. You need to think about your kids. And it's like, I'm not thinking about I made sure that my kids were with me. And I always made sure that we always stayed together, because I'm like, whatever we're going through, my kids are not leaving my side. Like, these are my kids. Like, they're going to, if I'm going to struggle, they're going to struggle with me. And they were resilient. I think people don't give kids the credit that they deserve.
Yes.
Kids are very, very resilient. And not saying that you should just go around traumatizing your kids, but
yeah,
they are resilient.
We worry more about them than we do for ourselves, and we're the ones who need to make sure that we're keeping ourselves together, whatever means that is. Whether through reading God's word or calling on God to help us, or seeking the help of a professional so that we can show up for our kids. And because they're going to be okay, whatever their priority is. Where's mommy, right? They don't even care where we at. We in the gutter. As long as mommy, we can put our eyes on mommy, they're fine. They're fine. And I agree. We're not advocating that people live any old kind of wish away, to and take their kids through unnecessary things. But the kids are more resilient than we give them credit.
They are. And it wasn't till the stage of my life now that they're able to say that. They're able to say that, because looking back at it, I've apologized to them. I apologize to them. I am remorseful for the things that we had to go through and for the things that they had to witness. They had to be also a part of it, because that was my decision to keep us all together and to not separate us, because I thought that was the best decision for that time. And now hearing them tell me that, that they were proud of me for the things that we've overcome, and they don't remember a lot of the bad stuff that I remember. They remember the fun stuff that we did, and them not realizing, we were doing that stuff because we were homeless. We're riding around the buses, we're riding around the trains, and we would go to a lot of different events, a lot of different free events. Where we got to even go to theme parks, we got to go to games, but that was because of the system that was in place for homeless women and children. They give you these vouchers where you can go to these places. So they're not realizing that it's fun for you, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, now once we leave here, where are we going to sleep? What are we going to eat? Because I'm like, they feed you here, but then now I have to worry about the next meal. So they're not thinking about all that other stuff that's to come. They're just thinking about, okay, mommy took us to do a lot of this fun stuff. Can we go back and do a lot of that fun stuff? So it was fun for them. It wasn't necessarily fun for me.
Absolutely.
And, and I just think back and look at that, is that, that I shielded them. I protected them from a lot of that stuff. But going back to the ladies. So, she basically told me, like, I needed to check myself. I needed to check myself. And it was not until a few years ago to where something just kind of shifted in me. And I just was like, I realized that I was in a functional freeze. I was in high functioning depression.
Yes.
I was in
Yes.
high functioning depression, and no one had told me that. Like, I had been to psychiatrists, I had been to
Mhm.
therapists, getting misdiagnosed for years.
Mhm.
They had told me that I was bipolar.
Right.
And then now it's like, you were never bipolar. You
It
were
was the
just going
trauma.
through a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
you had PTSD. You had
Mhm.
PTSD. You were stuck
Mhm.
in survival mode.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff, it was just because of my skin color, because of my demographic, just
Mhm.
a lot of things that go into play where it's easier for them to dismiss you than it is for them to actually get down to the nitty-gritty of
Mhm.
what is actually going on with you, because then they're realizing, hey, like, something has happened here. And then they're
Mhm.
like, okay, they have to start doing some work. And I feel like nobody took the time to do that work for
Right.
me as a young person.
Right.
And it took me to really want to see some change, because now I have kids that are teenagers. They're in that
Mhm.
same phase of life that I was in when all of that has started. And
Right.
I don't want that for them. I don't want
Right.
that for them. So I said, I need to heal me so that I
Right.
can be here for their healing, so that I
Right.
can be here for their journey. So it was through therapy, and God, it
Yes.
really, really changed my life. It really changed
Yeah.
my life. And I know that as a Black community, a lot of people shun therapy because they think, oh,
Yeah.
I just don't want to tell a stranger my business. That's
Mhm.
not what it is. I took those tools. I even went as far as to purchase psychiatry books to
Mhm.
find different things to work on what it is that I was going through, because no
Right.
one would take the time. You have to be willing to invest in yourself,
You do.
because no one else is going to do it. No one else is going to invest in you. You have to invest in you. So I took that time. It's like, if you have time to scroll on social media, if you have time to hang out with your friends, you have time to work on your mental health and your
Absolutely.
mental well-being. That is important. That is important, because what's going to happen is you're going to start now procreating with somebody else who is unhealthy, and then you're going to
Absolutely.
breed unhealthy
Yes.
people.
Yes.
And it's just like, I seen that, the people that were in my circle, they were not benefiting where I wanted to be in life. So I had to close that circle. I'm not talking about I had to make my circle smaller. I had to close it down.
Yes.
And I had to sit and be in solitude with
Mhm.
myself and say,
Mhm.
hey, Dominique, you are not okay. And it's not to say that it's okay to not be okay, but you need to acknowledge that you are not
Exactly.
okay. And
Right.
you need
Not
to
pretending
say,
like it's normal.
exactly. Now let's get to the drawing board. Let's find out the root of why it is that you are not okay, and let's fix it. Let's
Yes.
fix it. Let's tear the house down. Let's build new foundation. But in
Yes.
order to do that, I need to find some solid ground. So I had to find my solid ground. So
Mhm.
it wasn't until a complete stranger, a complete stranger,
And
just like,
sometimes we hear things better from complete
yeah,
strangers too, than
yeah.
maybe people that we're familiar with.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
complete stranger, like, just walked up to me, and she was like, she had been noticing me. She had
Mhm.
been noticing me leaving out of my apartment every day with my two kids. And she said, I never see your children not smiling. Never see your children not smiling. They're always in a good mood. One of them skipping up the street, the other one twirling around. And, like, they were just having a time of their life.
Mhm.
And that broke me. That broke me because, again, I was stuck in that functional freeze. I was high functioning depression. I
Mhm.
was depressed. I was depressed, but my children were happy. My
Mhm.
children were happy
Mhm.
because they had their mom. They had their mom. And so I said, the least I can do is to show up for my
Up for
kids. The
them.
least I
Yeah.
can do is
Yeah.
to get healthy, not just going to the doctors, getting it checked up,
Right.
having good blood pressure, good heart. No, getting up here
Yeah.
checked out,
Yeah,
is health is wealth. Health
it
is
is.
wealth. And it's like, it wasn't then that's when I started to be able to give my kids stability.
Mhm,
Give them stability, not just
mhm,
physical stability and where we live, but stability to where they're not having to now be in that fight or flight state because they don't know
yeah,
which version of their mom they're going to get. They
right.
wake up, they're like, oh man, they're tiptoeing around the house like, oh man, I don't
Mhm,
know who this is going to be today. Is this going to
mhm,
be nice
mhm,
mom? Is this going to be, crazy mom? Which
mhm,
version am I going to get? So I
mhm,
had to check myself. I had to check
mhm,
myself. And
mhm.
I wish I knew where that lady was right now. To like, I would give her a hug. I would embrace her,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
in that moment, in that situation that I was in, I could not receive that moment. I could not receive that message from her. And because of what she
yeah.
represented somebody who pushed me when I was already down. So I could not take that message from her. And I don't know, maybe that was God using her as that vessel for that message.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely, that's who it
eventually
was. Yeah,
unlocking that message for me and making me put some action behind it.
yes,
And I just now I'm able to see the growth of the
yeah,
person that I've become, because now I was able to unlock that memory that I had locked
yeah,
away all the way back 10, 12 years ago, of that
right.
lady telling me I was a bad mom.
Mhm,
And I can honestly say that in that time of my parenting, I was a bad mom. And I can be
mhm,
honest enough to say that I was a bad mom.
yeah,
But what you do with that information and how you change once you
yes,
realize, hey, I'm messed up. I need to get better. And
yeah,
now I can say, I'm a wonderful mom. I think that
yeah.
right now in this stage, my kids don't even deserve me. They
I
take
say that
advantage of
I
me
tell them that
sometimes.
too. I tell them that too. I tell them I'm gonna take my child back.
They
Yeah.
take advantage of my
Yes.
life change. They take advantage
Yes.
of that. Like, "Hey,
Yes.
mom, can I
I
get some
agree.
dollars?"
I
Yeah,
agree.
like, they take advantage of that. But no, but
Yeah.
I mean, it was just definitely just a life-changing event for me. It
Mhm.
was definitely a life-changing event, and it was something that had to happen,
Yeah.
because I may not be able to be here having this conversation. I just don't know where I would not be had I not had God and therapy in my life and being
Yes.
able to see that awakening in me, because I really think that had I continued on that path, that God would not have allowed me to continue to have these innocent children mixed up in all
Right.
of this foolishness.
Yeah.
And God don't play about kids.
Yeah.
God does not play about
Yep.
kids. So I
Yeah.
just don't think that God would have allowed me to continue down that path without striking me down.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I can say too that, it gives me peace to see because I remember, when you were really in a dark place in terms of mental health wise. And, as your mom, really not frustrated maybe because there's nothing I can do but pray, right? And just continue to pray and be there for support in whatever way I can. And just to see, it's almost like watching a butterfly. I love butterflies, and butterflies has always been my symbol since I was younger, me and my youngest sister. But just seeing you come from that to being like healthy all the way around is good too. And, and I've been on a parallel journey myself too, in terms of making better choices and doing some introspection and making some changes based on that introspection. And I'm always looking inside, I'm always looking inside. And I think to recognize things that aren't serving me. And that's one thing I want to highlight, that when you're serving the Lord, you won't have no choice because God does not allow his children to continue on in error. So he's going to show it to you one way or the other. So you're going to get it the easy way or you can get it the hard way. And if you want to get it the hard way, I don't recommend it. But at least my favorite book says that God chastises the ones that are his, right? And so although his chastisement for me has been very painful at times, right? it was what it and sometimes, some damage. So, it was some man down kind of situation, but it woke me up. And to the point that he spared my life, so that I can get to the point where I can say, okay, get yourself together and stop, cut it out, stop playing around, because this can get worse. And I will say that, and that's another part of, of your growth, that maybe even was challenging and difficult for me as your mom, that this is your responsibilities or your kids, and you had to do it your way. And is difficult as it was to see you enter a shelter system or whatever. I remember my own decisions as well around that. And I think the only thing that saved us from going to the shelter system is that I had a girlfriend who she told me horror stories or whatever about the one that she was in with her 5 children, and she offered us a place to stay. Now, that's a whole nother story that really, because once I did make that decision to stay with her, I'm going to work every day and how I was treated, which motivated me to hurry up and get out of that situation, which wasn't temporary. But I do see that also as part of your resolve to be a responsible mother, right? Because I don't know everybody under the bus, but we have family members who go to that, right? Who they decide that that they're gonna, stay with relatives just because they can. And so, sometimes is not helping them because now they're comfortable and they're not moving on what they need to do. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there too. It wasn't so much that because I had a roof over my head, certainly would not see you in that situation, but I also respected your decision that this is your situation that you need to resolve, and you did it well. You did it well. You did, and you went into, thankfully a system that wasn't horrible. Terrible.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say too. It wasn't
It was
wasn't your
clean.
yeah, it wasn't your normal shelter. It was very clean, and it was probably one of the best ones that I could
Yeah,
have been. And
yeah.
I can even go on a whole tangent of, there was this lady who had been on my life, and I owe a lot to I owe a lot of my success to her also,
Mhm,
is because when I had my first child at a very young age, is that she was there to support for a lot
mhm,
of that as well. My
mhm,
mom in her, and she walked me. She knew the system. She knew the system
mhm,
because she worked in the system. So she was on the phone with me for the entire phone interview. The phone interview must have been an hour long, but she
mhm,
said once she found out the situation and I told her what I was trying to do, she said, "Oh no," she said, "you're gonna go here." And I told her that they would not allow me to go there because I was working. So
mhm.
it was like you kind of have to make a decision. So then once I had lost that job, it was like, all right, well, now I have to have this conversation with her, because it's like, now that window has opened. I'm no longer working. So because we had a
Right,
7 o'clock curfew, and unfortunately that job, I worked nights. I got off at
right.
9 o'clock at night, and they just said, you just can't come here that late. So once I did, go back and, revisit that avenue, that she stayed on the phone with me through the entire interview, made sure that they did all their due diligence, made sure that they didn't, try nothing fishy or try to say no, they weren't going to take me. She was not letting them get off the phone with, "You're not going to take them and her and these kids." So,
Yeah.
she stayed on with me with the whole phone interview, the whole phone process. It was about an hour long. And
Mm,
she made sure that we were able to get in.
mhm,
And we did. We did get in.
mhm,
And I can say I was privileged in that way, that, I mean, and I
mhm.
know that that's odd to say that you were
Right.
privileged enough
It
to
was
go to a
homeless
shelter,
person.
but for a homeless person, I was privileged to have that opportunity, because
Right.
there was a wait list. There was a wait list
Mhm,
of people trying to get in there.
mhm.
And out of all
God's
the ones, it
favor. God's
was
favor.
exactly, that was God's
Mhm,
favor for sure.
mhm.
And I can even tell a story about God's favor with that, is because, so this was a Christian
Right.
ran
I
shelter.
remember.
And I remember this lady, she was intimidated by me. She was very intimidated by me, the
'Cause
director
you
of
knew
this
that Bible.
shelter. Yes, because I knew the Bible.
I
And she
remember. I
thought that,
remember.
so at the time I was separated from my husband. And she told me that God did not want me to be separated from my husband, that God made it so that we had to come back in a time. And I tried to challenge her with that, for a lot of different reasons. I'm not going to expose that,
Right, right.
but it's just, she was just saying like, oh, well, I basically had to be celibate if I was going to be there. And I said, well, how would you know if I was celibate? Like, are you going to do a vagina check with me every day when I come home? Like, I just didn't understand that. But she made it very, very weird. But so when you go into the shelter, when you first go in there, you're in a quarantine phase. So for a month, you cannot leave. You can't leave. You can't have any visitors.
Right, I remember.
So, but on Sundays, they closed the shelter from 10 to 2. You had to be out. And during that quarantine, because you had to be out, you still had to go to church.
Mhm.
So I told the lady, I said, I belong to the Church of Christ. And she allowed me to go to my church where no one else was allowed to go to their own church. You had to go to the church that they picked. And she said to me, because she was like, oh, well, the people of the Church of Christ, you think you're royalty or something like that. Like she was like thrown off at that. And I had never even, I'm like my little small world of this church. Like, I don't really know that this is not just a church of the city. So I did not know how broad this was. Like, cause again, I was young. I didn't really understand my mom dragging me to this church. So I don't really understand, how that this church, again, was in the Bible, that this was the church that God and Jesus had created. I did not understand that at that point, but I was beginning to have that revelation of how powerful the Church of Christ is. She basically told me, like, she was upset with me from the gate, that I thought that I was royalty. I thought that I had privilege and all of this stuff, and you're not going to have that with me. And like, she just from the door. I didn't know this lady. She didn't know me, but she just thought that she was going to break me. And that was her word. She said she was going to break me. And I don't know why I thought about a free range horse. Like, when you have a horse and you're raising horses and you're training horses, it's like, she thought that I was just like a horse that she needed to break into, that she needed to train. And the fact that she was a Bible thumper, and she thought that she was going to go verse with me, and she couldn't. And she just tried to find every way to break me down, but I did not, because I had God on my side. And she did not realize how, again, because I had a praying mother, because even then, at that stage of my life, I was not as strong in my faith as I am now. But even in that, I was going to prove her a point. So I would stay up late. I would read my Bible, and I would look up some because they gave us homework. They gave us homework every night. So you had to do Bible study every night with them after dinner. And she would always make the lessons about me. So I'm up in my room burning the midnight oil, just flipping through my Bible like, oh man, I gotta have a rebuttal for this. But that made me a better Christian, because me having that tit for tat with her, but using scriptures. So that made me a better Christian. And she don't know the fire that she put behind me, because like, if anybody knows me, I'm going to get something done and I'm going to prove a point. Right. So I'm just stubborn in that way. So the fact that it was using God's word, it makes it funny now, because it's like, you're not going to win this. You're not going to win this. I'm going to study this. I'm going to practice this. And I'm going to write down every scripture that I got to say. So every night, the next night when we do a Bible study, okay, does anybody have any questions, comments? My hand shooting up like, yes, I have some questions. Well, the other night you said this, but in the Bible it says this. And it also said, do not take away, do not add, do not do. I read her for filth, and because I did that, I got some extra chores added.
That's okay.
I got some extra chores, but I now know how to clean very, very well. I
Mhm.
know how to clean very, very well because of that. Because it was some stuff they had me cleaning I didn't even know you could take apart and clean. So it's just like, like it. Listen, it was a clean shelter. It was a good
Mhm.
shelter.
Mhm.
It just was the. I don't know. I don't know why that lady was threatened by me, but I thank God for her. I thank
Yes.
God for her.
Yes.
Praise him even then
Mhm.
because of that was a major cornerstone in my life to
Mhm.
where even though she wanted it to be a negative thing, it turned into a positive thing.
Yeah.
And leaving there, I was able to get my own my
Yeah.
first apartment on my
Yeah.
own,
Yeah.
right across the street
Right
from the
across the street
shelter.
from the shelter. Wasn't
Right
that
across the street
crazy?
from the
Wasn't that
shelter. So it was
crazy?
just like,
Right across the
I'm
street.
getting in my car, driving to work,
Right.
waving. And she had to live with that for the amount of time that I lived there, just
Mhm.
seeing me and my two children
Mhm.
thriving. And
Mhm.
when she tried to
Mhm.
break me, and that takes me to where God says that I will prepare a table.
Mhm. In the
I will
presence of my
prepare,
enemies, right?
yes,
In the
yes.
presence of the
And God
yes.
prepared a table right across
Yes.
the street.
I am a witness. I am a witness. I am a witness. God has always prepared a table for me in the presence of my enemies. Even to this day, this very moment as we speak, He will do it. He will do it. God stay faithful. God stay faithful and pray. Yeah, that's an amazing testimony. Yes. Yes. Okay. What's the next question?
All
I
right, so
like
the
where
so
you
the yeah, I like where this is going, and this wasn't even going to be planned. Look, I might have to make this the one
Yeah,
that I
we gotta
actually
be yeah,
do.
we gotta do whatever we gotta
Yeah.
want to get it in. But what was
So
the next question? Or
okay,
you took the lead on that one.
so the next and final question is, so this one is for you. So, what message would you like to share to the listeners?
So I guess since we've been on the theme of, motherhood, particularly single motherhood, and how to do that, I guess how to do that. You talked about, that strength being a weakness for you. And I also shared, I think that, people always tell me I'm strong too. And I always tell them, no, I reject it. I tell them, no, it's not me. It's not me. I'm human just like you. If you knew the things that I've been through, it's God. God is my strength. I got a bumper sticker so people can understand what I'm talking about from the book of Psalm. God is my strength. God is my strength. And so, yeah, I'm strong because God is my strength. Because the things that He had, the most challenging time of my life as a young woman, as a young mother, as a middle-aged mother, as a mother of children, as a mother of adult children, as a mother of sons, black males, as a mother of a daughter. God is my strength. God has been my strength. And that's how I've been able to do it. That's how I've been able to do it. And, people, you can't even imagine, some of the things that have happened to my children. Maybe we only touched on the surface. If you really knew the stories of my childhood, things that happened to me when I was a very young person, things that have happened to my children that resulted in that had different consequences, I'll say, all the way up to, from harm to death. I just lost a child. God has been my strength and will continue to be my strength. And if you're not, if you don't believe that, I had someone on my job, when I lost my son, they said they fell apart when their dog died or their cat died. They don't see how I'm doing it. And I said, it's not me, it's God. It's God sustaining me and God supporting me. I would, just convey that to people. And, as you said, Dominique, also earlier, mental health is important. Mental health is important. We go get vaccinated or not get vaccinated or get our checkups, or, even if we're not good at getting checkups, we at least go to the emergency room. But we don't go to the emergency room when our mental health is failing. We don't go to the people who can help us
Yeah.
when our mental health is failing. That mental health piece is important, and it's just as important as the physical. Because if you're not in your right mind, you're not going to be able to take care of your body. You're not going to be able to take care of yourself, your affairs, your business, and you're definitely not going to be doing any good parenting or any even substantial parenting if you allow yourself to just wither away mentally. And so the spiritual is most important. The mental is very important. The psychological is important. We have to be whole. We have to be whole. And mental health is a part of that whole. Spiritual health is a part of that whole. Physical health is a part of that whole. Being a part of a community is a part of that whole also, and not, trying to do this thing in isolated situations. I'm so happy that you have Hope Space also. We need community. We need community. That's Africans, we say African American, African heritage. Those of us, that's our roots, right? We had community, and we had community when we came here throughout slavery. That's what got us through enslavement. So we have to realize the value of community and stop being so competitive, right? And that's not us. That's not us. Stop taking on the characteristics of the oppressor. That's not us. No, outdoing me, stealing people. Man, I'm better than you. I'm dressed better than you. Or getting on social media and slamming other people who look like you. That's not us. That's not us. That's a characteristic of an oppressor. It's not. It doesn't serve us, right? It doesn't serve us at all. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help our community. It definitely does not help our families. And so I'm determined with the rest of the life that God has me here to embrace other women, not tear women down, commit myself to that, right? To stick together with other women, and we got to do a better job of protecting our children, right? We got to do a better job of protecting our children, period. Is no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because it's getting worse. And it's getting, when my son died, I told everybody, it's dark outside, y'all. We need the light. And that starts at home. We got to know where our kids are. Like you said in your first podcast, right? That thing is 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are, right? How many of us can say yes? Right? Do you really know where your kids are? Yeah, they upstairs in the bedroom doing what, right? No, you don't know where your kids are. Because now, when I had to answer that question and my mother had to answer that question, we knew the location, and that was it. That's all you had to worry about was the location. But now they can be right under your roof and you don't know where they are, because they got those phones, right? They got that digital that can take them anywhere in dangerous places, So we got to do a better job of taking care of our kids. And so that's really what I want to convey, is that we got to get back to community. We got to get back to protecting our children so we don't have these legacies of generations and generations of traumatic, torn, messed up, jacked up people who need help, who need mental health, who need fixing because of the damage that we allow, or the damage that our society allowed, because it's not all on us, right? It's not all on what happens in the home, and people try to make us believe that too, right? We are in a system that does not value us, right? And so if you don't value something, you're going to toss it, you're going to throw it away, you're going to kick it around, right? You're not going to take care of it. And so we have to be that for ourselves. And that can unify and strengthen us from the family out, right? From the inside out. So those are my final thoughts on that topic, on the topic of what we need, as a people. And I do like where this is going. Dominique. I love it. I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that though. But yeah, we definitely have to get back to community. We do. I had that growing up. I had that growing up. I know you had that. We were able to, even when you were at work, if I'm down the street doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing, you come home, you already know what I was
Right.
doing, because
Because the neighbor
somebody in
done
your
church.
community,
Yep.
exactly,
Exactly.
they knew. And then when you went somewhere, it was, oh, ain't you so and so's son? Ain't you so and so's daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Because that community might not
Knew
know
whose
you
child you were.
personally,
Yeah.
but they knew whose child you were
Yeah.
because that community was there. They
Exactly.
had that community. It's like now I couldn't even tell you what my neighbor looks like. If I
Right.
had to identify them in this situation, I wouldn't be able to tell you what they look like. And that's
Yeah,
just how society is. Cause we got the phones, we got the computers, we got all of this stuff. So people coming in, they binge watching their TV shows. No, don't nobody want to
exactly.
go outside and touch some grass.
Right.
Nobody's doing anything.
Or take the kids out there and touch some grass. I remember even too growing up where, especially when we were living with Grandma Hazel, all eyes were on you. And if you got caught by the neighbor doing something wrong, they could chastise you. And then you don't want them to tell, right? You're not, now say, I'm gonna tell my mom. No, please don't tell my mom, right? Like, so if the neighbor checks you, right, the neighbor chastised you, you hope it would stop there, right? Because they were looking out for you. Those what we used to call nosy old ladies, right? That's safety. That's safety. If somebody got eyes on you and seeing eyes on your child and seeing what your child doing, and they're not doing something that's safe or something that's going to cause them harm, you want that. You want that. But we don't embrace that anymore. We don't want nobody, telling our kids what to do or whatever, or even telling us sometimes, as a teacher, seeing people, no, that's not my child. Or, no, these people are with your child more times during the day than you are. They listen to them and figure out, what's right and what's wrong about what they're saying. And that's another thing. I know we're at the end, but that was another thing that I did when I would go up to the school with you guys. That's why I always say to me, tell me your side of the story. Because when I go up to the school, I want to be your advocate, right? I don't want to side with the teacher or the principal because you're out of pocket. Because first of all, you representing me in that school, and that we have rules. You know what I'm saying? It ain't about my reputation or anything like that, but representing me meaning someone who has the rules and regulations in their household for their kids, a structure for their kids and how they're supposed to conduct themselves. And for the most part, y'all did a good job. People always tell me, your kids are so, whatever. Y'all were good when y'all were outside the house. I said, well, y'all don't see it when they're in the house. I'm like, but that's good. And I can say that about the grandkids too. Like, people look at them like, they are so quiet and well behaved. I said, yeah, I know. I said, my daughter does a good job with them. That's their mom. That's their mom. It ain't all on me. That's their mom checking them, whatever. Because if it wasn't their mom, even if they're out in public with me, then that's going to show, right? And now I got to yell at them or whatever, but they have that at home. So when I used to go to the school, it was about, all right, now I'm more of a mediator, right? So if my kid really is acting up, then yeah, you're going to be chastised for that or punished for that at home. But I also want to hear, why is my child acting up, right? Is it because of what's going on at home, or are they showing off for their friends, or is it you, Mr. and Mrs. Teacher? Is it you, right? In some cases, in your case, Dominique, that was the case, right? When you were in middle school, in high school, a high school young teen mom or whatever. It wasn't you. It was them, And so if I wasn't open-minded enough to say, okay, I hear what they're saying, let me find out what's going on. And you would tell me, I'm like, okay, so now I'm going up to the school with an informed, mind to advocate for my child. And that's exactly what I did. So yeah, we gotta get these, we got to make these connections again with one another, with our children, with our extended families, and they don't have to always be relatives, right? Whoever they might be, and also our community, and tighten it up, because it's cuckoo out here right now. It's not a good environment for us to be all on different pages. We all need to be on the same page and be connected, and people know that we're connected so that we don't get meddled. So thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of her, America. We're going.
Bernie Mac.
So proud of Dominique. I'm so proud of Dominique, she's a flower in bloom, and y'all better take advantage, because she got some wisdom for y'all now.
Mm-hmm.
She got some wisdom for y'all, and wisdom to sharing, her hopes and aspirations and experiences.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure.